Whoa, how's it going? How's everybody doing? Sorry, this is kind of a surprise. I thought I was going to start later today uh, because I was running late to my location. I'm on vacation on an island, but actually, I got here just in time to start the stream. So I apologize if anybody is got thrown off because I said I was going to start later, but I'm actually not starting later. But yeah, so here we are on time. It is very humid outside on this island, so and it's about to be sunset as well. So we'll try to use the light as we can. Hey, what's up, Raven? Thanks for being here. So nice to see you. But yeah, so let's go ahead and read some more about this UFO paper and yeah, see what we could do. I'll see how far we could get today. I was also reading some about mass spectrometry, so we might have to get to that section and explain what this technique is, mass spectrometry, this technique for analyzing UFO material. But anyway, happy Tuesday, everybody. Sorry, I literally just checked into my hotel room, literally just like 5 minutes ago, and I decided to go ahead and start to stream. So I can maybe go to the beach a little bit later. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen. Ta-da. I'm going to go slowly today so I don't mess anything up. Very slow, not rushing. Okay. Okay. All right, going slowly. Okay, let's pull up this paper. Ta-ta-ta. All right, so this is part two. So if anybody's catching it today, you could watch part one, which was a few days ago. Should be the video before this one. We're basically reading a scientific paper that was written by a couple of scientists and some research assistants. So we got Garry Nolan from Stanford, Dr. Jacques Vallée is also here, a famous ufologist, Saizun Zhang, and Larry G. Lemecki, who's retired from NASA. So what these guys did, I believe they're all men, I'm not sure, but they went ahead and wrote this paper called Improved Instrumental Techniques, including isotopic analysis, applicable to the characterization of unusual materials with potential relevance to aerospace forensics. That is a mouthful. I did explain what that means in the other video. And this just came out. I was trying to find a date for this paper. The link is in the description. Yeah, it just came out in 2022. So it came out this year. So it's hot off the presses. So what we had done last time is we had read the abstract, which is the summary of the whole paper. And then we had also read this. We skipped the introduction because they just talk about the methods they use, and that's a pretty heavy analysis, which we may have to break down later. And then we read a summary of the UFO case. And we saw some pictures, like here's a picture of what the UFO material is. It kind of looks like a fossil to me. Yeah. Okay. So let me just read, I guess, what happened, because I don't think it's too long, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So I'm rereading this, but this is just the case that happened. So this section is called Overview of the Incident at Council Bluffs, Iowa, on the 17th of December, 1977. An event that took place in Council Bluffs, Iowa, on the evening of Saturday, December 17th, 1977, provides an interesting opportunity to compare testing methodologies suitable for the analysis of material recovered from aerial objects. The Council Bluffs case has been previously reported in detail by Jacques Vallée and in a book by Professor Peter Sturrock of Stanford University's Plasma Research Institute. So you can read more about those cases if you look at number 29 and number 30 in the work cited. So on that day at 1945 CST, or 0145 GMT, a red luminous mass was observed by 2 Council Bluff residents as it fell to Earth near the northern city limits, slow enough to enable its approximate trajectory to be noted. A bright flash was seen, followed by flames 8 to 10 feet high. When they reached the scene, the witnesses found an area covered by molten metal that glowed red-orange, igniting the grass. Police and the firemen arrived within 15 minutes and saw the mass, with estimates ranging from 35 to 55 pounds, boiling down the edges of the levee in an area of about 4 feet by 6 feet. The center portion remained warm to the touch, and I said, who's touching this stuff? Who's touching this UFO material? Do not touch a UFO material. For approximately 2 hours, no cratering was noticed. The site is a public area called Big Lake Park in that suburb of Omaha, Nebraska, located on the southeastern shore of the Missouri River in Iowa. This section of the park, known as Gilbert's Pond, lies across the river from Eppley Airport. So it was very close to an airport right across the river. Missouri River. The weather at the time was overcast with a 2,500 feet ceiling, visibility of 10 miles, temperature 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind was from the west-northwest at 16 miles an hour, with gusts up to about 25 miles per hour. Given the physical evidence, a representative fragment is shown in Figure 3, the photos we just saw. The availability of cooperating witnesses and the proximity of a major airport, the investigation was immediately oriented to the potential for an industrial accident, an aeronautical malfunction, or a meteorite. So when this first happened, these were the 3 options that were given. It was some kind of industrial accident, like with a plant or some kind of weird metal, or it was an aeronautical malfunction, so something from space, a satellite or a plane ended up crashing or ejecting something, or it was a meteorite, something from space. After ascertaining that the material was not radioactive, so they tested it for radioactivity, very good, 2 chemical analyses were rapidly conducted, one at the Iowa State University laboratory and the other at Griffin Pipe Products Company, a private company. Both agreed with the determination that the material was a metallic alloy, or it was formed from more than one metal. It was a mixture, chiefly iron, with small amounts of nickel and chromium. So it was mainly iron, and there was a little bit of nickel and chromium, 2 other metals. The report indicated that the microstructure, so the microscopic structure, very small scale structure, suggested the study sample was carbon steel that was cast, subsequently reheated at about 1,000 degrees and cooled at an intermediate rate, so that it resembled wrought iron. So wrought iron is an alloy containing low carbon content in about 0.08% or less level. So wrought iron contains very low amounts of carbon, less than 1%. So it's like 0.08%, a fraction of a percentage. No pictures of the microstructure were provided in the historical report. The problem with that determination was that nothing accounted for the way a large amount of that very heavy and extremely hot material could have been deposited in the area in a molten or liquid state, following the clear observation of a luminous object in the sky, the purported source of the material, which remained unidentified. So this isn't technically a UFO crash. I think it's a material associated with a UFO. So perhaps the origin is from the UFO. I've heard stories where UFOs have been seen ejecting this kind of molten material. I don't know if they're emptying in their toilets, or if it's just like a waste product from the engine, or if they're just having fun with us. Therefore, the investigation went to a second, more specific phase of analysis along several hypotheses. First, there was an abundance of valuable eyewitness testimony that had to be reconsidered, which will be reviewed below. All right, so they did this initial analysis, but they didn't think it was good enough. So now they're going to go ahead and look at the eyewitness testimony, because a lot of people did observe what happened. All right. We got Melinda in the house. Hold on a second. Let me do something. Okay. We got Melinda in the house. Thank you for being here, Melinda. I am on vacation, and I thought I was going to have to do the show later, but I just checked in, and I was able to do it. It's really humid. I'm on an island right now. Janet is here. Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you, Janet, for being here. Good vibes. Thank you very much. Good vibes to you. We got the hero of the show, John P. Adventures. My brother in collecting recycled metals is here. Thank you. Good vibes, good vibes. Thank you so much, brother. I'm sure happy every time you're here. Thank you for everybody watching this right now and in the future. Let's see. John P. says, we have to read this paper always with an open mind and suspect the mind as much as this information is meshed. They don't want secrets out. Yeah, okay, so that's a good point. We're reading this paper. It is about a fringe subject. It is made public. So we have to keep it in, we have to remain skeptical and think critically, as always. That's a great point, John. John says, cheers. Thank you. It says, nice, enjoy your holiday. I will. It just started right now, I guess. I just checked into the hotel. And Melinda says, vacation, good times, and good vibes. Yeah, very tropical. It's very humid. The beach is like right on the other side. This is the parking lot. We're not facing the beach, but the beach is over there. So we'll get to the beach. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. I sure appreciate it. Like I said, originally I thought I was gonna have to do this later, but I checked in on time, and everything worked out just perfect. So, all right. So we've caught up with everything. I just did a really quick rehash of what we read last time, and now we're gonna read some new stuff. Also, I did find a textbook for my entomology class. So I guess if you want the textbook, email me and I'll tell you how to get it. There's actually a website where you can get a lot of textbooks in PDF form. I did a little searching. But my email address is wild7trees@gmail.com. So I guess now it's going to be about a week and a half. I will start a class on entomology. It's the study of insects. I will be teaching the class. I'll hand out tests. You don't have to do the test. You can just watch and learn. It'll be on Tuesdays. But I found a textbook that's very recent. We could all download it and use it if you want to read along. So email me if you want to get the textbook. But I'm going to make some slides, and it's probably going to take several weeks to cover the material. But afterwards, we'll all know about insects. And I think that'll allow us to go deeper into biology. I mainly study insects. I'm an entomologist. So this is my way of teaching you what I know a lot about. And then we could all be kind of on a similar level, and we could go deeper down the rabbit hole as far as insects goes. I don't usually pay extra for beach views, and it is calmer. Yeah. All right, guys. So yeah, that's the update on the class. Email me if you want the textbook. Secret. Let's go back to the paper. I am excited about the class. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start a clip channel. So in the description of this, in the comments of this paper and in the description, I'm going to put the channel name for the clip channel. So I'm starting a new channel where I'm only going to put small clips from all my interviews and all my shows, like 10 minutes, 5-minute clips. And you guys can subscribe to that if you want shorter content and not the long form videos. But anyway, let's get back to this paper. I'm excited because I've been in a car all day, and finally I'm not. Oh, okay, stretch my back. Okay, so this new section says initial eyewitnesses and official reaction, first on the spot evidence. So let's go back in time to the 70s and see what happened on that day. As mentioned above, the first observers were 2 Council Bluffs residents, and the report was soon confirmed by independent people. Investigators were able to gather testimony from no less than 11 witnesses in separate groups, all within an hour of the incident. So that's pretty good. Within an hour, everybody's moving pretty fast. Good for them. It's unusual in such cases of anomalous phenomenon. Yeah, that's true. The key witnesses could be positively located and identified. Wow. So yes, what he's referring to in Jacques Vallée is really big into this. He's referring to chain of custody. Chain of custody means if you have a story, a photo, a piece of a UFO, you need to be able to trace it back to the original place. So what he does a lot of times is, let's say there's a photo in a piece of UFO. Well, he wants that person who got it to write down on a piece of paper their name, where they could be found, the time, the location of the photo and the UFO. And then when they hand it to someone else, they give them that piece of paper with their signature that has all the details. That's chain of custody. Now, if that second person gives it to someone else, they also write on a piece of paper what their name is, where they got it from, when they got it from the person, and they include that second piece of paper, and then it goes to the third person. If a fourth person gets it, so forth and so forth. That is what chain of custody is. And I agree, it's very important in UFO cases. That way you could trace back your evidence to where it originally came from. And that's important for insects too. I mean, in the entomology class, we're gonna talk about starting an insect collection, your own little collection. Well, every single insect in the collection, it has a piece of paper on it, and it has all that information. It has who collected it, where did they collect it from, when did they collect it, what kind of beetle it is. So chain of custody is very big in science, and it should be very big as well in UFO cases. Okay. The first report came at 7:45 p.m. Okay, so this happened. The first person who saw it was at 7:45 p.m., so it was kind of evening. From 17-year-old Kenny Drake and his nephew, 12-year-old Randy James, who were driving on North 16th Street. Kenny's wife, Kenny's got a wife at 17 and his wife is 16? I don't know, it was the 70s. I guess that's how it went, but good for these crazy kids. Okay, so Kenny's wife, Carol, 16 years old, was also in the car. All three saw a reddish ball at an estimated altitude, the height, of about 500 to 600 feet. It fell straight down and impacted within Big Lake Park. Okay, so it did fall. There was a bright flash and what appeared to be flames shooting into the air about 8 to 10 feet high. Interesting, okay. While these witnesses only observed the dropping object, others, see below, had observed a stationary, flashing object that was in the area from where the reddish ball originated. All right, so these three witnesses, they just saw this object fall, a reddish ball, but then other people saw a stationary flashing object that was in the area from where the reddish ball was originated. So some people saw a reddish ball and other people saw a flashing, stationary or non-moving flashing object that was in the same area. All right, let's keep reading. Mr. Robert Allen, who had served in the Air Force and wrote a regular astronomy column for a local paper, investigated the site the next day and confirmed there was a clear line of sight from the impact point to their location, as the molten material formed a large hot mass about 4 by 6 feet wide, and there's some figures and Polaroid pictures that describe it. Once again, you could download this paper. There's a link in the description. You can look at this at your own time. You can look at the pictures. You can do whatever you want. Say, igniting the nearby grass. Drake and James, the cousins, drove to a local store and called 911. The call was given to Jack Moore, assistant fire chief for the Council Bluffs Fire Department, who responded in his personal fire car. No firefighting crews were required, however, while the police, who had intercepted the call, dispatched a cruiser car to the scene, driven by Assistant Chief Moore. He requested an officer from the identification section to join him with a camera to photograph the material that was boiling down the edges of the levee. The center of it was way too hot to touch. Okay, so now they're saying it's way too hot to touch. So originally it was way too hot to touch. Okay. The material would remain warm for another 2 hours, despite the freezing air and ground temperature. The time was about 8 p.m. Interesting. Okay. Officer Dennis Murphy arrived and took several pictures with both a Polaroid color camera and a 35 millimeter SLR camera equipped with color film. Note, four Polaroid shown in supplementary figure 3. Originally, polarographs are in the author's case files. Okay. So, I don't know, let's see. If I click here, see if it takes us there. Click, click, click. Looks like a link, but it's not a link. Okay, we'll go there later. The recount of the incident. Oh, so they're saying that the author has a case file and those original photographs are with them. Okay, so the recount of the incident by Drake and James before the officers did not deviate from the story they first told. Okay, so they're being consistent, the cousins, with their story. It's not changing. Checks were made with both Eppley Airfield and a Foote Airfield-based Air Force-based Nebraska, in quotes, to ascertain if any aircraft might have. There's a Polaroid right there. Polaroid. Reported equipment or engine failure or loss with negative response from both. So they contacted these Air Force bases and this airport, and they're like, was there any equipment that messed up or had an engine failure or anything from you guys that could have caused this? Both of them said no. Let me check on the comments real fast. Make sure everything's good. Cool, everything seems good. All right. Okay, arriving on the scene the next morning, Robert Allen had no difficulty locating the site, noting there was no cratering, so there were no holes in the ground, which he had expected given that he believed there would have been an impact. Okay, here's a map. Let's look at this area. Let's look at the map real fast. So there's Eppley Airfield right here in the middle. My cursor down here. And here's Carter Lake, but here's Big Lake Park over here. And this X marks the spot. And then number 2 is a witness. There's the Missouri River. Number 3 is a witness. And number 1 is a witness. But let's see, which is the Drake brothers? Let's see if it tells us. No, it doesn't tell us. Okay. Anyway, there's a map. Okay, so he gathered several samples off the ground. Okay, so somebody went there the day afterwards, which I believe is Robert Allen. And so Robert Allen went there to investigate, and he got several samples from the ground and pieces of the object. Good for him, although that's kind of scary, including the ones now in the author's custody. So the author has some of these pieces. They were collected and cataloged. So by catalog, that's what I mean. It's what you do with insect samples. You put a label on them. You put a date on them. You just give them metadata, information about information. But an analysis of the reports disclosed another interesting fact. Oh, okay. Early witnesses had observed a hovering object separate from the glowing falling mass. So there's 2 objects. The mass that fell, I believe, by the cousin brothers and the wife of one of the cousins. the cousins, they saw a red glowing mass along with the wife of one of these 2 cousins, and it fell to the ground. But early witnesses also observed a hovering object separate from the glowing falling mass. Interesting. Okay. Next section, corroborating witnesses. Okay. As the first 3 witnesses were watching the glowing mass, a small car stopped and 4 young men, about 18 years old, asked if they had seen that falling thing out of the sky, after which they drove away. Original map, point 1. Okay. A few minutes later, when Kenny Drake was making the 911 phone call, authorities were also contacted by a middle-aged couple who were traveling north on 16th Street, point 2. They reported seeing a bright red mass rocket to the ground near Big Lake. They refused to be identified on the record. At that point, no less than 9 witnesses in 3 separate groups had watched the incident as it happened. 2 more would soon come forward. Further south on Broadway Avenue, 24-year-old Mike Moore and his wife, Chris, had been driving east toward downtown, crossing the 16th Street intersection when she first saw the object, described as round, with red lights blinking in sequence around the periphery. Now, this sounds like a classic UFO. So it was round with red lights blinking in sequence around the periphery. It's red. The lights are red, just like the mass that fell from it. Mr. Moore saw it when they reached the Broadway Viaduct, point number 3 on the map, as a bright red thing at treetop level. He described it as a big round thing hovering in the sky below treetops. It was hovering. It wasn't moving. Interesting. It was just chilling, hovering. Mike Moore was at that time a parts man at an auto dealership. His wife, Chris, also 24 years old, was a legal secretary. Given the amount of detail and the consistency of the observations supported by the evidence of the massive material, 5 hypotheses had to be seriously investigated. So they got 5 hypotheses that have to be investigated. Okay. And so here, now we're going to go over some hypotheses of what hypotheses are potential explanations of what could have caused the mass that was hovering and the mass that fell. All right. Let's go ahead and I guess let's look up I just want to give you the official definition of a hypothesis so you guys know. All right. So a hypothesis is a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. There you go. So yeah, it's a possible explanation. Well, that's pretty much what I said. Good for me. I'm not that bad of a teacher. All right. So here's the first hypothesis. Re-entering satellite debris hypothesis. Okay, it makes sense. So they're saying that a satellite is no longer in orbit, and now it's re-entering our atmosphere, and yeah, that's what you got. Okay, so the U.S. Air Force reacted rapidly to Robert Allen's request for their advice. The detailed report he had submitted to them proposed. It is our theory that the material was a piece of space debris which re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and was not completely destroyed during re-entry. Measurements taken at the impact point would indicate the object was traveling from the southwest to the northeast on a heading of 109 to 110 degrees. In response, the Office of the Secretary wrote that its scientists were very impressed by the thorough documentation of the events and the analysis present in the report, yet they did not feel that the material was space debris for 4 reasons. Okay. So now they're saying, like, they're trying to be polite. The Office of the Secretary was writing to the scientists at the Air Force. He said, hey, we're super impressed with your documents and your analysis in the report, but we don't feel that you're correct. And here's 4 reasons why. All right, so this is interesting. We got some UFO drama. Okay, so so the first reason why they believe it wasn't a space debris. A, re-entering spacecraft debris does not impact the Earth's surface in a molten state. So that's a good point, I guess. So yeah, it was molten. It was liquid metal, and they're saying, when debris comes from spacecraft, it doesn't hit the ground like a liquid metal. The aerodynamic heating that usually causes the spacecraft to completely burn up during re-entry takes place in the upper layers of the atmosphere before the maximum dynamic pressure is reached. If the material were hot enough to be in a molten condition as it passes through the maximum deceleration point, which probably reaches 10 Gs, that's a lot of Gs, it would separate like a fluid In that case, it would have cooled by descending through the lower atmosphere and would have been solid at Earth's impact, not in a molten state. Whoa, these guys are good. Okay, so they're spitting some facts. Like John P. Adventure says, let's be critical about it, but according to them, they're saying that there's usually a lot of heating that takes place, heating right here. And when a spacecraft is coming back into our atmosphere, and because it heats so much, it usually causes it to completely burn up during reentry. And this happens in the upper layers of the atmosphere. And they're saying if the material were hot enough to be in a liquid state, and at that point, it would be 10 Gs. That's the amount of force that you feel. Like I think if you're on a roller coaster, you might feel like 1 or 2 Gs, up to 3 Gs. When you're in a roller coaster and you're going at the highest point. So 10 Gs is a lot more. So they're saying in that case, if it were to be a liquid and it reached 10 Gs, it would separate like a fluid. And if that happened, then it would cool down and would hit the Earth as a solid. Okay, very good. Okay. B, the mass of the material was estimated by police to weigh about 35 to 40 pounds. Yet there was no crater or noticeable indentation. They're saying, look, this thing weighs about 35 to 40 pounds. But if it was coming from space, that's a pretty big weight to come all the way from space, and it didn't make a crater or any indentation. Okay. So space debris having a reasonable ballistic coefficient in the 100 to 300 pound per square foot range can be expected to hit at a velocity of 200 to 400 miles per hour and would make at least some impression in the ground and would have splattered well beyond the original site. No such dispersal was noticed by any witnesses. Well, that's a great point. Wow, that's a lot of 100 to 300 pounds per square foot and going about 200 to 400 miles per hour. That's a lot of numbers. It's high numbers. Okay. C, the reported visual sighting was at an estimated altitude of only 500 to 600 feet. Re-entering space debris is not glowing or hovering at this low of an altitude. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. D, the last reason, there are no structural indications in any of the debris samples. This is very unlikely for space debris from human satellites or missile satellites. There are no structural indications in any of the debris samples. So they're saying, I think what they're saying is that all the samples that were collected of the debris, there's no structure to them. And usually, if it is space debris, there would be some kind of structure or shape to indicate that it is space debris, And they're like, this doesn't have any of that. So then, Colonel Charles Sen concluded, the Air Force does not feel that additional investigation or analysis is warranted. So the Air Force is like, done, baby, shut it down. Let's go home. Nothing to see here. While helpful in dismissing the satellite hypothesis, this report left Mr. Allen and the Council Plus Police Department with an unsolved problem and 4 remaining hypotheses. All right. So let's go to the other hypotheses. Check the comments. Okay, everything was good. Okay, meteoric impact hypothesis. The idea that the material might be the result of a meteoric impact seemed initially attractive. They're like, yeah, this is looking pretty good. I'm getting kind of interested. I'm kind of attracted to this. This is a good idea. Meteorites of all dimensions are routinely picked up on the surface of the Earth. That's a good point. In this case, however, examination of the sites and primary chemical analysis quickly eliminated this hypothesis. First, there was no cratering, no holes in the ground. Perhaps a glancing impact would have accounted for this. So maybe it would hit the ground like a skipping rock. Okay. 2 additional determinative lines of argument eliminate an iron meteorite fall as the source of the Council Bluffs material. First, There are the aerodynamic forces of passage through the atmosphere interacting with the mechanical properties of the meteorite that determine at what speed and in what form meteorites can impact the Earth's surface. The total mass of the Council Bluffs material, approximately 18 kilograms, would have formed a bolide of only about an 8 centimeter radius. Okay, what is a bolide? Let's find out. Don't know what a bolide is. Bolide. Bolide meteor? Let's find out. A bolide, this is from Wikipedia, is normally taken to mean an exceptionally bright meteor, but the term is subject to more than one definition, according to the context. It refers to any large crater-forming body. All right. So let's see, where were we? Okay, so the total mass of the, I'm right here, the total mass of the Council Bluffs material, approximately 18 kilograms, would have formed a bolide of only about 8 centimeters radius. So 8 centimeters is not that big. Computer modeling shows that at typical meteorite atmospheric entry speeds, approximately 11 to 30 kilometers per second, an iron meteorite of this size would probably survive on the surface without breakup, but it would have a terminal velocity of, is this less than? Yeah, less than 100 meters per second. An impact velocity of 100 meters per second corresponds to a specific energy of 5 kilojoules per kilogram, while the specific energy required to melt slag iron, latent heat of fusion, is approximately 209 kilojoules per kilogram. Thus, an iron meteorite of this size would have arrived at the ground with far too little kinetic energy to become molten. So they're saying that the energy that they calculate of this bolide, this iron meteorite, would be about 5 kilojoules per kilograms. However, if you're going to melt this type of iron, you need it to be at least 209 kilojoules per kilogram. So you can see 5 kilojoules by kilograms is a lot less than 209. So they're saying there's not enough energy there to melt it. Thus, an iron meteorite of this size would arrive at the ground with far too little kinetic energy to become molten or liquid. Second, iron meteorites are found to contain between 5 and 40% nickel, whereas the Council Bluffs material had only trace amounts of nickel. So it had very little nickel when they analyzed it, which is a metal, and iron meteorites have about 5 to 40%, so a lot more. Thus, the material did not meet the physical requirements for a meteorite. It remained too long in a molten state, and spectrographic analysis did not disclose metal components that should be an integral part of the meteoritic material. So basically, it didn't have enough nickel in it, and the fact that it was liquid for so long, that couldn't happen if it was a meteorite because there wouldn't have been enough energy. So it's not a meteorite. It's not fallen space debris. So what else could it be? Okay, how about this? Try this on for size. Fallen equipment from an aircraft hypothesis. All right. I'm intrigued. Because of the proximity of Eppley Airfield, it was thought that the incident might have been associated with a piece of equipment or metal which fell from an aircraft landing at Eppley Field on the runway heading 320 degrees. Okay. The initial check with Eppley, however, indicated no pilot report of equipment loss or failure. So yeah, nobody reported at Eppley Airfield that there was any kind of equipment loss or failure. Next, a check of all airlines operating into Eppley Field indicated no arrivals using the runway that would bring any aircraft near the impact site. Furthermore, no equipment or metal could fall at a speed necessary to bring the material to incandescent or molten state. An aircraft using that runway would have had to descend rapidly over the Richmond Gorman store, from which impact was observed by the first two witnesses. And at that point, it would have been at 500 to 1,000 feet altitude only. Having eliminated the hypothesis of re-entering space debris, meteorite, or aircraft equipment, the investigators were left with the possibility that the case might be the result of a hoax. Oh no, we got a Scooby-Doo moment. Is it a hoax? Is it a hoax? Is it fake? There are two ways in which one might imagine that the material might have been deposited as a joke. Okay, so now we're left with this idea that what if this is a joke, a hoax, a fake? They're saying there's two ways that somebody could have made this fake hoax, basically. So let's read about that. Okay, everything good over here, 40 minutes. I'll probably go another 20 minutes. This might end up being a 3 or 4-parter. I mean, this is the longest paper we've ever looked at. But I mean, if that's okay with you guys, that's okay with me. I don't mind. I want to find out what's happening here. Okay. So, is this a hoax perpetrated using thermite? All right. When the material was examined at the laboratory of Professor Frank Kaiser, University of Iowa at Ames, he observed that, quote, one could prepare a rather similar sample in the following way. One would collect the splatters from a casting or welding operation involving carbon steel. Okay, that sounds pretty easy. One would transport this to the position where the material was found. So you go to this lake. One would then surround the metal with thermite powder and ignite the powder. This would heat the metal to the 900 to 1000 degrees Celsius range. And the thermite reaction would generate the iron aluminite oxide sponge. A cooling rate approximate to wrought iron microstructure could be achieved by spraying water on the mixture. Okay, so you have to get this stuff called thermite, and then you have to take your metal and you have to spray it, light the thermite, spray it with water. Sounds a little dangerous, but it was the 70s. What else are you going to do? The problem with this hypothesis was that the material was in a molten state when the witnesses arrived. It had not solidified and could not be picked up. The ground was frozen to a depth of at least 4 inches, and the air temperature was 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Thus, in quotes, had someone tried to cool the material in an intermediate state, there would have been considerable ice in the immediate vicinity caused by the water used to cool the material. Finally, a check made with both chemical and construction firms in the Council Bluffs, Omaha area disclosed no source of thermite. Thermite is readily made from powdered iron oxide 3 and aluminum powder, which can react as, and then here's a formula, we have Fe or iron 2, oxygen 3, plus 2 aluminum, reacts to form 2 iron plus aluminum, 2 oxygen 3. That's a chemistry lesson. Maybe I'll teach a chemistry class. So it's showing the reaction, basically. This is what you have to begin with. And then you have a reaction, which I believe you light it on fire, thermite, and you get this. Okay. While it is not impossible to rule this out, this does not explain how 30 pounds of iron with other elements such as titanium. Oh, I love titanium. I love tungsten the most, but I love titanium a lot as well. Great metals, great elements, some of the best. Okay. So while it is not impossible to rule this out, it does not explain how 30 pounds of iron with other elements such as titanium was reacted in midair and dropped visibly in the sight of multiple witnesses, and how no visible melting of nearby earth was evident to have created the heat to melt iron at that temperature. So that's a good point. So it's like, how did they light this midair? Because they observed something in the middle of the air. Okay, interested. Okay, so here's another possible explanation for a hoax. Okay, it says, one second. Okay, is the incident a hoax perpetrated by pouring molten metal on the ground? All right, so getting crazy with this, okay. So did somebody get a bunch of molten metal and pour it straight on the ground? Sounds dangerous once again, but hey, I don't know. That's what they did for fun back then, I guess. Another more radical hypothesis assumed that persons unknown, perhaps the first two witnesses, no, not the first two witnesses, the cousins. Well, they were like 16 and 13 or something like that. They were teenagers. I don't know. Had simply brought molten metal material to the site and poured it on the ground. Accordingly, a check was made with every metal firm in the metropolitan area with the remotest possibility of maintaining metal in a molten state. This included all foundries, pipe manufacturers, metal fabricators, etc. The only facility with such capability and equipment in the Council Bluffs was the Griffin Pipe Products Company. Mr. Linton Stewart, works manager, stated they dropped the bottom from their cupolas on Friday afternoon and did no pouring whatsoever until early on Monday. Okay. I believe a cupola is a tool that holds molten metal, but why don't we just expand our vocabulary and impress our friends? So, and once again, we're seeing if I'm right. Okay, that's not well. That is a type of cupola, but it's a structure. But let's try this out. I'm not sure if that's what they mean. Let's see. Let's type in cupola metal. Oh, here we go. Cupola metal menting. Oops, what am I doing? I told you guys I would not go too fast. I'm going too fast. Let me just try one more thing here. Backspace. No, click. Backspace. Metal melting. Let's look at this one. Okay, so Wikipedia says a cupola furnace. There you go. A cupola or cupola furnace is a melting device used in foundries that can be used to melt cast iron. Yeah. So there's two types of cupolas, and I'm not sure if that's how you spell it. Okay, so anyway, Cattleman's Foundry. Foundry is where the ending of Terminator 2 Judgment Day took place. I believe that's where like metal material is made, and there's a lot of metal melting going on, and that's where Terminators go to die, killer robots from the future. Cattleman's Foundry used to have facilities for pouring molten metal at one time, but had not done so in 3 years. Paxton Mitchell Steel in Omaha stated that, quotations, in order to melt the material and then transport the molten mass to the Big Lake area would require considerable equipment. They added, in quotations, the melting point of some of the components is in the range of 2,400 and 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's very hot. I'm getting hot just thinking about it. Once molten or liquid, the material would have to be transported in a brick oven of at least 6-inch thick lining. The walls of this oven would have to be 6 inches thick, which would necessitate a large truck to transport the oven. That's a lot of work for a hoax. Although we are still talking about it 40 years later, so worth it? I don't know. And it would be necessary to keep the metal at the required melting point. So, that being said, ooh, there's a cool breeze, cool ocean breeze. It's really humid out here. Okay, the investigators concluded that the material associated with the object in Big Lake Park was not manufactured, transported, or deposited in the area in order to perpetuate a hoax by any of the foundries in the metropolitan area. Primary witnesses do not have the equipment or experience to meet all the prerequisites of perpetrating a hoax. In all interviews and discussions with investigator, police, and news media, their recounts of the events have not deviated since the initial conversations. Well, interesting. So probably not a hoax. Let's see, where does this end up going? Oops. Oh, wait. Okay, sorry, I kind of lost what I was reading. I went up here. Sorry, guys. Okay, so I think we have to go here now. Advanced analytical methods. Okay, let me just make sure. I believe so. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'll probably edit this out later. Okay, so we're right here now. Okay, so this is advanced analytical methods applicable to exceptional physical events. Okay, so they're using advanced methods of analyzing these physical events. Okay. The material recovered at Council Bluffs consists of three components. Okay. Solid metal, slag, and white ash, inclusions in the slag. In the previous section, we have mentioned the results of the analysis at the Ames laboratory, which estimated, which examined all three of those by X-ray fluorescence, electron beam microprobe, and emission spectrography under the supervision of Mr. Edward de Kalb. Okay, I think we skipped over that section. Okay. Let me see. Should I read this part or should I get to more juicy parts? Yeah, this is just talking about what they found. Which is interesting, but it's pretty dry. Okay, how about we go here? Right here. So this section says speculative conclusions. By the way, there is no right way to read a research paper. You know, sometimes you're just looking for one specific piece of information. So you don't have to read it. It's kind of a choose your own adventure story. You don't have to read it from beginning to end. There was a joke in graduate school. This one guy, this guy I had a rivalry with. It was just playful, I guess, but he would always be like, "Well, when I look at a research paper, the first thing I read is I always look at the graphs and the charts, you know." And then he goes on to list what else he looks at. And I would always joke, "Well, when I read a research paper, the first thing I read is the acknowledgement section, which at the very end of the paper is like where you thank people. You thank people for helping you with the paper, which is, if you're a scientist, is the least important thing. So the joke is that I'm reading like the least important thing." Good times, silly times. Okay. So what are the speculative conclusions? Okay. We have outlined current trends in advanced material analysis, which we have not read yet, as applied to solid samples collected in the field, with a view to determine their nature, structure, and potential purpose. Our experience with the Council Bluffs case study shows how difficult such a determination can be. Okay, so they had a hard time with the sample. Even when abundant evidence is collected within minutes of an event, supported by reliable testimony from multiple witnesses and in well-defined meteorological conditions. All right, I'm guessing they haven't made a conclusion on what they found, because they're saying they had a really hard time, even though they had all this evidence, they had chain of custody, they knew what the weather was like, they had witnesses. You probably couldn't have a better case. Okay. Operation Morning Light. Okay, after their initial dismissal, the U.S. Air Force again took a special interest in this case because of another quote-unquote crash that took place in northern Canada at 11:53 a.m. GMT on January 24th, 1978, only 5 weeks after the unidentified observations and the recovery of metallic material at Council Bluffs. So, up in Canada, only 5 weeks later, there was another crash. The Canadian crash was a result of a malfunction aboard a Cosmos 954 954, a Soviet reconnaissance satellite designed to observe ocean traffic, the Ruskies, including surface and undersea vessels. It was powered by a liquid sodium-potassium thermionic converter driven by a nuclear reactor containing 45 kilograms of uranium-235. Whoa, they're not playing around. Soviet authorities secretly warned the United States that control of the satellite had been lost and that the system intended to propel the spent reactor core into a safe disposal orbit had failed. Oh, okay. So the Soviets told them secretly, they told the United States, like, hey guys, we lost control of the satellite, our beautiful Cosmos 954. And yeah, guys, we lost control. And furthermore, the system that was intended to propel the spent reactor core or this radioactive uranium into a safe disposal orbit or safely away in orbit, yeah, that system failed, guys. I'm sorry. The science, it happens. That's why I'm not a nuclear scientist. The science correspondent of the London Daily Mirror, Arthur Smith, pointed out the satellite was the 15th of its type to be launched by Russia. The effort to recover radioactive material from Cosmos 954 was dubbed Operation Morning Light. That's a pretty cool operation name, I gotta say. Thus, it was natural for US and Canada authorities to revive their lagging interest in Council Bluffs, and to investigate a potential connection. Given the analytical results and the instrumental procedures described above, it soon became clear there was no connection between the two events. Okay. The origin of the material collected at Council Bluffs remained a tantalizing mystery, leading to speculation about more esoteric theories about the hovering object with rotating lights independently described by two of the witnesses. One is led to ask what would be the requirements to determine whether such materials were not man-made, but originated with an unknown source, either in the solar neighborhood or elsewhere in the galaxy. This includes the possibility that the material was engineered in a purely conventional manner by humans for yet unknown purposes. All right, interesting. Well, this part looks really interesting, but we reached an hour, so I will we will pick up here next time. So it says potential significance of advanced material design. So we will pick up there. But very interesting, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. So John P. Hold on, let me put myself up here. Oops. Okay, John P. says. Leave the arrow of the mouse where you're reading. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'm actually thinking about, I'm going to make my cursor like bigger. There's a way I can make the cursor, like the little arrow, like super big, so it's easier to see on the stream. But thank you, John. I was actually thinking about that. I will definitely do that. Melinda says, I've got a titanium and cobalt knee. Oh, look at you. That's pretty impressive. Okay. I hope it's working out well for you. John P. says, I'm watching triple XOM TV too. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. And then Melinda says, interesting paper. Using Occam's razor, I blame the Russians. Yeah, blame the Russians. We'll see where it goes. It looks like it goes some interesting places. But yeah, I guess thanks for watching, everybody. It's about to be an hour. I sure appreciate everybody being here. It's a long paper, but it's getting interesting. The story continues to unfold. So we'll pick it up, I guess, on Friday. I will still be here on vacation, but I guess I'll just still do the show from this balcony. Same time, same place. But anyway, thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a great week. I hope you're having a good week. Anybody watching this in the future, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching Mr. Catfish. Welcome to the show. Frapsap, haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're still watching. Let's see who else. Melinda, John P. Adventures, thank you. Nina, thank you for watching. And anybody else, if this is your first time watching, please subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say, guys. Go ahead and eat some dinner. And Scotty says he was listening. Well, thank you, Scotty, also for listening. He's got a titanium plate that screws in his bag. Okay, so a lot of us here have got some titanium. And John P says, thanks, have a great relaxing time. Thank you, John. Anyway, guys, I guess I'll go ahead and head out, maybe have a margarita. Well, thanks so much.